It's the year of our Lord 2026, and we really got Arman Sarukian and MMA Guru in the same room before we got a Movsar Evloev title shot. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Money Manziel MMA channel. It is a beautiful Monday here, sunny outside, not too cold. It's about to get pretty chilly in here because this will give you the shivers, if you know what I mean. This is a pretty crazy tale. I'm gonna show you a UFC fight that happened that I really believe was an example of a timeline shift. Everything from the moment afterwards of this exact UFC fight was forever changed. And now, what is a timeline shift in general, right? It's a disorienting feeling that reality has fundamentally shifted. Now, you may be asking yourself, how the fuck does the UFC have a timeline shifting moment? Well, let me fucking tell you before you start making judgments a little bit. You don't know, so don't be like the fucking Riddler in this picture down below. Let me, the Money Manziel MMA channel, show you what I'm talking about. When we think about timeline shifters, you could look at a fight like Stephan Bonner versus Forrest Griffin, seemingly saved the UFC from crippling debt. It was the end of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. People tuning in, ratings spiked, and all of a sudden the UFC was kind of able to move on from there and make more money to be able to become the sport we know and love today. Another example of a timeline shifter way more recently would be something like the announcement of Volk versus Lopez 2. I think this signaled the beginning of the real entertainment era in the UFC, where the UFC made it very clear that merit no longer warrants you a title shot. Even if we had kind of known that already, this was a very clear indication of the standard they have set for the Paramount era. Um, Now, a third thing, by the way, just because it's a Money Manziel video and I have to get this off before we begin, there's some timeline shifters when it comes to just seeing certain fights. Listen, anytime you see Ayman Zahabi on your screen, it's a timeline shifter. I've already shifted your timeline. Your life was much better before you saw Ayman Zahabi on the screen. Now it's horrible things are going to happen now that you've seen Ayman Zahabi. I hate to tell you, it's like a black cat crossing in the middle of your path. That is no good for you to see a picture of Ayman Zahabi. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of our video is to discuss the UFC fight that shifted the timeline forever. Let's not waste any time. Now listen, it is the eve of a UFC pay-per-view, and it is completely dog shit. You look at this card. This is hilariously bad, by the way. I want to be clear. I know I complain about pay-per-view cards now. Everyone complains about them. Boy, were we fucking lucky, because look at this card. We got fucking Tyson Pedro versus Harry Hunsucker and Wu Yanan versus Lucille Pudilova. I think that's how you say her name. On the main card of a pay-per-view. This is $80, by the way. Just fun fact for you. $79.99 to buy this pay-per-view. Now, we did have Aldo versus Marab, Paulo versus a returning Luke Rockhold, and then the title fight between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. This seemed like a very easy card to predict. Other than Aldo Dvalishvili, maybe there was some toss-up there. It felt like Costa was going to knock out Rockhold easily, and then Kamaru Usman was going to win a dominant decision over Leon, which is what Kamaru had been doing in a majority of his title fights. The card goes on, and it's kind of interesting. There's some moments, you skip the Amir Albazi fight because we do not watch those on this channel, and you get to the Kamaru Usman-Leon fight. It's midnight, you're like, fuck, like, can this shit end already? Like, we know what's going to happen. It's going exactly as you expect. Kamaru Usman dominating round to round, imposing his will, grappling. He was landing big combos on the feet, hurting Leon in moments, getting him backed against the cage. Leon was defeated. There was no way he was going to win. The only win for him was the moral victory of taking down Kamaru Usman. And you could kind of walk away from the fight being like, okay, at least there was a little moment, right? Kamaru finally got taken down in a UFC fight. Can't believe Leon was the first to do it. Colby Covington fucking sucks. But regardless, Leon took him down. That's a moral victory. So from seeing these first 4 rounds of the fight, it's headed into the 5th round. You're like, fuck, bro, it's 1:30 a.m. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to sleep. I'll see you in the morning. I'll watch the post show after the fact, and we'll talk about who Kamaru Usman's ready to face next. You close your eyes, you go to sleep, you say, I'm going to have wonderful dreams of a world where, fucking Tyron Woodley's still the champ or some shit. You know what I mean? Maybe you're a Woodley fanboy. And, again, eyes are closed, head on the pillow, you fall into a REM sleep, and just as you fall into a REM sleep, you hear the Joe Rogan scream. And you see Ayman Zahabi waiting outside of the window because he can't wait to tell you either. You can't believe it. You see Kamaru Usman is out cold on the canvas. Joe Rogan screaming. John Anik is in disbelief. Daniel Cormier can't believe it. Kamaru Usman is out cold. You're in a daze. You're like, what the fuck happened? Like, I was supposed to be in REM sleep. I need to get like a 95% sleep score on my Aura ring. Like, you're excited for the next day, and all of a sudden, the fucking champion is out cold. The guy who you've only ever known as a winner. Kamaru Usman was only winning fights in the UFC prior to the Leon fight. You had no evidence that he would ever lose a fight. He got dropped briefly in the Burns fight, and that was basically all of the, um, you know, pushback and hardship he had ever had in a UFC fight up to this point. All of a sudden, out cold, Leon's doing the fucking McGregor strut. Headshot dead. Headshot, bruv. Yeah, I'm from the trenches, bruv. Headshot dead. And you can't believe it. You're like, holy fuck, like, Leon Edwards is the UFC champion. I truly believe that the moment this head kick lands on Kamaru Usman, the UFC timeline permanently shifts. There's kind of a crack in the matrix. We jumped dimensions. This was not supposed to happen. That's what you need to understand. Kamaru Usman was up 3-1, and it was winning the fifth round, too. It was going to be a 49-46, no question, for Usman. It was going to be a moral win for Leon to get one round off of the champion. Was never supposed to land this head kick. The second he does, everything changes. And you're going to say, okay, well, obviously everything changes. Leon's the fucking champion. Fucking stupid video idea. We sat here for 6 minutes, and that's what you're going to tell us? I'm going to tell you what changed. The very next pay-per-view is UFC 279. Chimaev versus Diaz. You're saying, okay, classic UFC, we're back to normal. We got Hamza taking out the old guard. Li Jingliang is going to brutally abuse Tony Ferguson in there. And we're going to move on with our lives. Another dog shit pay-per-view for the third fucking fight night, or the third pay-per-view in a row. People forget the UFC 277 card was Pena Nunes 2. What a banger that was. Regardless, this was 279. You're thinking, okay, we're back to normal. Chimaev, all good, right? 278 was crazy, but something like that will never happen again. We're done with the craziness in this year. Khamzat Chimaev misses weight by almost 8 pounds. Weighs in at 178.5 for a fight that's supposed to take place at 170. And all of a sudden, we're running around looking for new opponents, and it magically becomes Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. The send-off Nate Diaz was always supposed to have. Somehow, some way, Nate Diaz ends up in the fight that the UFC should have made in the first place and ends his career in the UFC with a guillotine win. Nate Diaz fashion, flipping off the crowd, flexing, shouting out Nick Diaz Army in the post-fight interview, exactly as it was supposed to be written. That's only the start of the craziness, right? Because we had the whole card flip for 279. You're like, okay, that's back-to-back crazy cards. There's no way that we're going to get another weird pay-per-view, right? We're up to UFC 280. And that's Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. And if you remember the discourse coming into this card, right, there were a lot of exciting fights. It was a banger of a pay-per-view. But the thought was, okay, Charles Oliveira is legitimately invincible. I remember watching the Justin Gaethje fight and legitimately thinking, no one has ever fucking beaten this dude. This is the greatest fighter on earth. No one is touching Charles Oliveira. This dude is made of God knows what. He continues to get beaten up and knocked down and still keeps winning. If Gaethje can't do it, then no one can. He's going to run through Islam. And I'm not the only one who thought that, because Tapology had 66% of an 8,000 viewer count saying that Charles Oliveira was going to win the fight to Islam's 34%. What happened in what was supposed to be a competitive fight between two of the best guys, especially when you look at Charles Oliveira's reign of dominance for a while, you're saying, okay, very competitive fight. Who knows what's going to happen? It'll probably be a Charles finish. Maybe Islam wins in the later rounds by decision. What ends up happening is the exact opposite. You get an Islam Makhachev domination. Completely ends the Charles Oliveira era as the champion of the sport. You legitimately cannot believe it. You're sitting here going, no way in hell is Charles Oliveira now no longer the champion. I know he got it vacated because of the weight miss, but who gives a fuck? That shit was fake anyways. You're sitting there like, bro, Islam Makhachev just ended the reign of a guy who hadn't lost in like 3-4 years. And he did it with ease. He knocked Charles down, submitted him in round 2. It was no problem at all. So like, okay, that's not that crazy, right? Just as a viewer, you're like, okay, well, Islam winning the fight isn't that crazy. I mean, look, in hindsight, he was one of the best of all time now. Okay, I'll take that information. I'll put it in my ear right now, and I'll listen to it. I'll hear it out. Then I'll present to you the other fight on this card that was interesting. Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley versus. Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. The 1 versus the 11. Sean O'Malley coming into this fight, nobody liked. Maybe some people liked him, but it was gimmicky. The guy was still doing the whole I'm undefeated gimmick, even though he lost to Marlon Vera. And, this is a Sean O'Malley coming off of a no contest eye poke over Pedro Munoz. Not a guy coming off of a bunch of ranked wins. The only ranked win he had in the UFC was over Raulian Paiva at UFC 269. Not exactly the greatest win in the history of this sport. But yet, somehow, some way, we live in a society where Sean O'Malley gets a number 1 contender fight 10 spots above him. No one believed that he could win. I guarantee you, coming into this fight, that the betting odds were crazy for this, because nobody thought Sean O'Malley was going to beat Petr Yan. If you look at the actual matchup, Petr Yan was coming off of the interim title win over Corey Sandhagen, which was incredibly impressive for the time. You look at his loss after that, which was Aljamain Sterling by split decision, you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, yes, he lost, but it was really close. Sean O'Malley's nowhere near Aljamain Sterling's level. Petr Yan is going to dog walk Sean O'Malley. What ended up happening was a Sean O'Malley split decision win in Abu Dhabi, of all places. Not in America, not in Vegas. But Sean O'Malley gets it done somehow, some way. You can't believe it. You're saying, okay, the shenanigans have to be done now. There's no way that these continue after this pay-per-view, right? Sean O'Malley has somehow beat Petr Yan. The world doesn't make sense anymore. Pigs are flying. Fucking Money Manziel MMA isn't the most niche channel on YouTube. Like, you're just saying to yourself, okay, this is done, right? Did you forget what the next pay-per-view was? It was UFC 281. I'm telling you, it's like a script. It's like it wrote itself for me to do this video. UFC 281. Pereira versus Adesanya. Adesanya, the long-reigning middleweight champion. This dude has been the champion for God knows how long coming into this fight. Alex Pereira has had a couple fights in the UFC. He's like 5-1 as a pro. Maybe 5-1 as a pro. I'm not even sure if that's true. He's coming off a win over Sean Strickland by KO, but everyone was like, okay, Strickland's stupid. He stood in there and traded with him. There's literally no way that a guy with like 5 professional fights is going to win a title fight in the UFC in the big 2022 at the time. What ends up happening, if you remember, is Alex Pereira losing every single round outside of, I believe there was one round that he might have gotten, but it was 3-1 heading into the 5th. Alex Pereira down. He was looking kind of tired. There was no way Alex was going to win. We were going to get another Izzy decision, business as usual. Finally, the run of crazy pay-per-views is over, and Alex Pereira goes out there, stuns Izzy, finishes him. It might have been a little early, but finishes him in the 5th round of a UFC 281 title fight. You literally cannot believe your eyes. This has happened again on a pay-per-view after the Leon Edwards KO over Kamaru Usman. The conspiracy continues for this timeline shift. And you're saying to yourself right now, watching this video, you're going, okay, it was 279 was crazy, 280 was crazy, 281 was crazy. There's no way that there's another crazy pay-per-view to end the year. Because remember, this was in November, so there was a December pay-per-view. You're racking your brain right now, you're going, okay, what the fuck was 282? What fight happened then? There's no way that was a crazy one. It had to be boring, right? Think again. Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev, and Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. Some of the fights on this card. Now, if you remember, right, you're going into this thinking, okay, it's, light heavyweight. We've had a bunch of crazy events with light heavyweight where Yuri had to vacate the belt because of an injury. So we're going into this vacant belt. Ankalaev versus Blachowicz will get a champion, and we'll move on with our lives. The UFC will be better going into 2023. Instead, you get a draw in the main event of the fight. You get a draw between Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. You have Joe Rogan stunned in the post-fight interview. Everyone on the booth can't believe it. His teammates are like fucking spetting out in the corner somewhere. Unbelievable. A draw in the main event. If you count in if you factor in some of the fights that happened on this card, Paddy Pimblett brutally robs Jared Gordon the fight before this. I think that was the co-main, which is crazy. But brutally robs Jared Gordon. You have Dricus du Plessis dropping a round to 2022 Darren Till. You have Ilia Topuria submitting Bryce Mitchell, which is what nobody expected as the result of that fight. A crazy, crazy pay per view. My Mac is on low battery. Are we dead as? Regardless, let's X that out. Regardless, you get a UFC 282 fight that ends in a draw. Okay, you're sitting here thinking right now, like, okay, this is a cool little fucking story, bro. Like, you've gotten 15 minutes of our time, but you're just nitpicking pay per views, right? Like, I'm just looking at each pay per view. I'm not looking at the fight nights. The fight nights were all normal. It was totally fine. You're just kind of being nitpicky and you're trying to farm content off of one moment that created a couple of crazy pay per views after the fact. Okay, believe what you want to believe, but I'll tell you this: Tuivasa knocked down Gane on the card directly after Usman versus Edwards. Do you think if Tai Tuivasa fought another 3 times that Tuivasa would ever have a moment like this in 2026? Tai Tuivasa lost the next 4 fights after the fact. As he should have. He was never that good. He just fucking beat Derek Lewis. He beat Derek Lewis and Greg Hardy, and all of a sudden Tai Tuivasa's the fucking go to the sport. But regardless, knocks down Cyril Gane. We were a few seconds from a Tai Tuivasa John Jones fight. Um, the card after that, Cater, or not the card after that, but another fight night that happens during the stretch. Calvin Cater blows out his knee and ultimately ends his career versus Arnold Allen. Additionally, you had Sonya Dawn with a massive cut on his face that loses in the main event versus Corey Sandhagen. So we get another kind of wacky ending to a fight instead of a normal fight. You then go to November. You also get Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak being canceled hours before the fight as the main event. I'm telling you, it's not just pay-per-views. This fight changed the UFC timeline for the complete rest of the year. It switched everything around. Hell, we had Jamal Hill beat Glover Teixeira as the first pay-per-view of fucking 283. Imagine telling that to someone. Like, Glover Teixeira's going to lose to, like, a random kind of tubby black dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, man. You can't even write this shit. Like, I really have been working on this because you look at these fights and you're like, there's no way that this is real. Like, these all happen in succession right after the head kick lands on Kamaru Usman in a moment that's never supposed to happen. But it really fucking does. This isn't even it, bro. Fucking Wonder Boy turns back the clock. Is it fucking 2017 again? Stephen Thompson turns back the clock, puts on a masterclass against Kevin Holland. Dude, fucking very few people thought Stephen Thompson was going to win. Kevin Holland was coming in as this guy who was now making a run at welterweight. He had a bunch of good wins now. This was his ascension into the welterweight rankings, and no one was going to stop it, not even Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who looked like he was at the pinnacle of being washed, coming off of losses to fucking Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns. There was definitely someone else in there. Stephen Thompson was very, very washed coming into this one. And no one thought he had a chance. He turns back the clock, beats Father Time, and puts a beat down on Kevin Holland as one of the final fights of the year. You could even continue. I mean, the Cannonier Strickland fight, the one that Strickland was super mad and thought was a robbery, ends the year where you have two 49-46s for Cannonier and then a 49-46 for Strickland, all in the same year, all after that August pay-per-view at UFC 278. I think it forever changed the UFC, and I think that should be the takeaway. I think coming into UFC 278, the MMA gods were washed, right? We had boring pay-per-view after boring pay-per-view. You had Izzy at UFC 276, point fighting Cannonier. You had Amanda Nunes getting the belt back and restoring order at UFC 277 on another pay-per-view, which wasn't spectacular. You had another boring pay-per-view of 278 where somehow, someway, Leon gets the head kick, and all of a sudden, all of these crazy events happen after the fact. I think the MMA gods took it personally. Shout out to Michael Jordan. And I think they put on a Linsanity run for the fans afterwards. I think they knew we needed something spectacular. I think that run of fights completely switched the UFC's timeline. Because we were on a run of incredibly boring pay-per-views with no future looking that bright. We had 280 on the horizon, but it's like, okay, fucking UFC 280 was like the one bright spot. Then all of a sudden, all of this crazy shit happens after the Leon KO? I don't fucking think so. I think some shenanigans were at play. Investigate the UFC, investigate fucking, I don't know, maybe Putin had something to do with it. Don't shoot me if I come to Russia. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, this is the UFC fight that changed the timeline forever. I hope you can see the evidence I've presented to you. We got serious here on the channel today, right? We're usually all fun and games. We don't take shit serious at all. But I came in here today and I've given you hard, cold evidence that Leon Edwards, KO, and Kamaru Usman forever changed the UFC. I hope you can see what I'm saying. I know I just fucking yap for 20 minutes straight, but God forbid, man. Let a brother do his thing. I appreciate every single one of you for watching the video. It means the world to me. Um, I had no clue when this video is coming out. It will be out today, Monday, though. Hopefully it's at our normal time. I hope you all like this video, man. It was a lot of fun putting together. I couldn't believe some of this when I was recording it live, just kind of thinking about how crazy fight after fight was. Main event after main event. You get a canceled one. Just so much crazy shit. So it was a blast putting this together and kind of doing the research, getting a little serious on the channel. Let me know if you like the style of video. If you want me to go back to the funny shit, I will, and I probably will, honestly, because I enjoy those just as much, if not more. Like, comment, and subscribe down below. It means the world to me. We're almost at 1,200 subs, which is fucking awesome. So keep showing support, keep commenting. I'll see you on the next one. My TikTok is at MoneyManziel MMA. If you don't want to watch the TikTok, then go leave a like or a comment on my YouTube Shorts. I always reply to every single comment, good or bad. Just don't be fucking mean to me, man. Listen, calling me a casual hurts the most out of anything because I fucking listen, man. I pay attention. So I might have casual takes, but I'm no damn casual. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out, boys.